Makoto Yukimura is best known for the creation of Vinland Saga, a masterpiece that is still in the making, but before he went back into the past of the violent Viking era, he was actually in the future, and more specifically, up in the vastness of space. It's as much of a departure as you can get aesthetic-wise from his other work, and yet you can still see the core themes and ideas of love and connection emanating from almost every single panel. Unsurprisingly, Planets uses the backdrop of outer space and an ever-advancing scientific world to focus as much on the human condition as possible, so much so that I feel like Christopher Nolan had to have read this manga before he made Interstellar. Also, side note, if you listen to the Interstellar soundtrack while reading this, it goes really well together. And although space itself is this endless, infinite void, the manga is mostly centered around a small crew of debris collectors floating slightly above the Earth. It takes place in the near future, where humanity is only just beginning to colonize the nearby areas of space and the moon. It's relevant enough to not seem like it's so much science fiction, but still holds that aura of whimsy and fantasy too. Most of the technology and concepts are stuff that we can comprehend and make sense of even in today's standards, and it helps the story feel more real and lived in. We don't have to take a huge leap of understanding in order to follow along with what our characters are doing and the stuff that they're using. And our characters are essentially garbage men of space. And this story hits you right over the head right away, explaining why Yuri, the oldest member of the crew, is with them. Or at least you get a piece of the puzzle of how he got from point A to point B. Years earlier, losing his wife in a space accident and knowing that a compass that she had with her is still out there in space somewhere, circling around the Earth. Somewhere in space it exists, floating in that nothingness, and it's a reminder of his lost love, and his struggle to find it is almost like reclaiming a piece of her. It's a compelling opening, and right off the bat we are giving this very personal human reasoning for everything, and all of the advanced technology and colonization is really an afterthought to the focus of Yuri's love and his reaction to that loss. But shockingly, he isn't really the main character. That title belongs to a younger character named Hachi. He has plenty of idealistic dreams of space travel and wanting to save up enough money for his own spaceship so that he can explore forever. A lot of the first half of the manga really emphasizes his ambition and his drive for adventure, and it's only amplified by the larger scope of what humanity is up to as a whole, how those dreams that push us towards these new worlds of discovery happen, but also the dangers that are within that. Very early on in the story, we are introduced to concepts like terrorist organizations planting bombs, wanting to keep humanity's poison away from the rest of space, not to ruin it as the way that they have ruined Earth. Or a fault in design that causes a massive explosion, leaving plenty of researchers and others to suffer deaths and the losses of loved ones. A price to be paid for pushing the boundaries of what humans long to discover and control, and the cold reaction from those in charge knowing the risks that were at hand. But a lot of the overall ideas are told through Hachi and his development. This determination that he has causes him to put himself in intense positions of danger. There's an accident that leaves him momentarily stranded in space, just narrowly missing being hit by deadly radiation, pushing him through some PTSD-like sicknesses, and ultimately deciding he wants to partake in a dangerous mission to Jupiter. All the while, slowly but surely, his drive and fortitude pushing him not just away from the Earth, but also away from other people, away from the possibility of love and connection. Now, when we think of space, we know it to just be an empty void of nothingness. Imagine floating out within it, nobody near you, nothing to cling on to, just at the mercy of its cold darkness. I think that maybe Yukimura was trying to say something about the detachment from our humanity in the pursuit of greater things. That aiming for the stars, though is a positive in many instances, at some point while trying to reach for them, we may become ungrounded. The stars are still far away, but now we are too far gone to come back to Earth, to ground ourselves. Planets as a title might meant to be represented as our connection to others, that without planets, well, it's just black emptiness, no life and no potential for it, that without the grounding force, and if we only have weightlessness, there is a lack of purpose. Those goals, those ideals, they don't mean anything without somebody to show it to share it with, or to see you thrive, or to come back to. So I think it's about balance. There's characters that continue to go back and forth to space and back down to the Earth, and there's others who spend their whole lives in space, never returning until their deaths. That empty space is all they have, and it's all they can look at as they pass away. Partway through, another character gets added to the debris collector team named Tanabe, and even me, at first, had quite a few disagreements with her, like the moment when they find a coffin of a man floating in space who wished to have his remains put into the sky. I was on Hachi's side during the debate since it was, after all, this man's choice. But Tanabe's argument is that knowing that this man had a bunch of loved ones waiting for him down below, and then he rushed into radiation and died selfishly, well, if you're going to do that, then what's the point? If you are able to make a connection in this world, to have love and to be loved in return, why would you take that for granted? And I do understand her point. And what's great about the way that Yukimura writes is that he so rarely gives any character a position to be 100% right or 100% wrong. He gives them different outlooks and points of view that creates a scenario where, depending on where your head is at the moment, you can either agree or disagree with whoever makes the most sense to you. The other main character on the crew is named Fee, and she's kind of both the most level-headed one, but also flies off the handle plenty of times. Her backstory isn't covered until nearly the end of the manga, but when it is, it really pulls on the heartstrings, and leads her to making some decisions that go against the norm, showcasing that sometimes those within positions of authority aren't always correct, and that you should never lose that innocent part of you that always questions why. Even those with the most influence or confidence can be wrong, and it's okay to stand up for what you truly care about, or at least ask the questions. The manga is mostly pretty short. It's comprised of 26 chapters over the course of 4 volumes, and those chapters are a bit lengthy. Sometimes it feels like every chapter should be the conclusion of some long ongoing arc with how emotional they get, but instead it's just one part of an ongoing short story. It'll oftentimes cut between characters, devoting entire full chapters to some of them and then not returning to others for a few chapters. Even though Hachi is the main character of the story, most of the manga revolves around him, but there are plenty of chapters where it's too busy focusing on other characters that it doesn't have time to get back to him, but it works that way. I think the series really is just trying to ask questions, and even if Yukimura is putting some of his own morals within it, there is always the sense that he's just trying to understand. It's saying human ambition is important, but when does it end? And if it does end, we should remember the reasons why that ambition is ultimately going to be important, and that's because of our loved ones and the people that we share the fruits of our labor with and ambitions with, not to get lost in the nothingness just for the sake of it. It's about balance. At least that's how I read this manga. It's about how we need both, and we need to advance as a society, but we also need to stay grounded and remember why we even want to in the first place. And also that not everybody is going to be able to reach those stars, and that sometimes that's okay. Because even if every single goal you had isn't accomplished, when you have people to enjoy the simple things with, when you have people to love, well, that has a value all on its own that's also irreplaceable. All in all, Planets is a short and sweet story with its messaging that gives you enough content to sink your teeth into, but it's not something that's going to be a huge time investment. I think it's really well made and it makes you think, and it's what Yukimura does so well. He shows you what is, and you can decide what's right, even if you disagree with what he thinks, and it's a writing style that he would carry over and perfect within Vinland Saga, giving us so many characters with different opposing worldviews. We know what Yukimura thinks, but he actively writes characters that disagree even with himself, and he doesn't always paint them as the bad guy. In fact, there's rarely ever a single bad guy in his work. It's just a complicated, messy world with so many people trying to do so many different things. And if exploring that is something that you're interested in, then I highly recommend reading Planets. Or I guess you can watch it, because there is an anime adaptation as well, which I haven't seen, but I also hear it's pretty good. Anyways, guys, tell me what you think. If you have read Planets, let me know what you think about it down below. What did you get out of it? What did you think about its themes or its messaging? If you haven't read it, are you curious about it at all? Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. As always, guys, if you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and a comment, because it will help it in the algorithm. And you can check the links in the description for channel memberships, Patreon, and all the social media links where you can follow me. Other than that, guys, hope you have a wonderful day. I'll talk to you next time.